Hey, y'all, I'm Tammy J. Bond, and I want to welcome you into a series inside the Leadership Sandbox. I'm titling this series, Dear HR, I'm not whining, I'm warning you. So I want to get one thing straight right out of the gate with this series is that I think too often we have labeled millennials and Gen Zs as being fragile, and they are anything but fragile. In fact, what they are frustrated, and I hear it all the time. They're bringing bold ideas, strategic insights, real time feedback to the table, to the conversation. And too often they're being told to sit down, be quiet. They haven't done their time yet. They don't know. They haven't been around the block enough times yet. Whatever the excuses are that the older generation is telling them. And if you've ever been shut down in a meeting before or dismissed by a boss who knows better or labeled as a problem just for speaking up, then this series is for you. And I don't care what your generation is. And if you're in HR or if you're in executive leadership, this series is your playbook for listening differently, to learn how to listen differently, not to make assumptions just because you think that you know better. So you don't lose your best people to silence and resignation, which is happening far too often. We're diving into real conversations in the sandbox with this series, real conflict and real scripts that are going to help you flip the script. See what I did there? From noise to insight and from frustration to influence. So let's get into it with our new series launching right now with our first episode in 3, 2, 1. Let's go.
Hey leader, want to elevate your leadership and foster a healthier culture? Think about this. Your culture is not defined by what you say. It's actually defined by how well you listen. It's about how you handle everyday conversations. We understand that some of those conversations can be tough to navigate. Are you unsure of how to respond in these moments? We can help you turn employee feedback into transformational action. Download the free Leadership Sandbox HR Translator Toolkit and discover 5 powerful scripts to help approach tough conversations with clarity and purpose. Register for your downloadable toolkit by visiting the podcast page of our website, bondgroupenterprises.com/podcast. Click episode 81 to start transforming your conversations today.
All right. Well, welcome to You Called It a Complaint. I called it a cry for strategy. HR leaders, if your people are still bringing feedback to you, they haven't given up yet, and that's a good thing. I always tell people if they're coming to you, even if it's with a complaint, that's not a bad thing, y'all. That's just a conversation that isn't being finessed in the right direction. But if you keep calling it complaining, they eventually will. If you keep labeling people as complainers because they're bringing feedback, then that's exactly what you're going to see. And that's how they're going to show up every time. But maybe the feedback is something that we need. You see, when it comes to millennials, 74% of them say that they don't feel heard at work. 68% of employees who feel their feedback is ignored plan to quit within 12 months, says Gallup. And then you've got only 2 in every 10 employees strongly agree that their performance reviews are handled fairly. That was a 2023 Gallup study. Think about that. 2 out of 10 people think that their performance reviews are actually handled fairly. And that's shocking on many levels, not shocking on many other levels, because I get to go in and have those conversations to help people correct those pathways of how we mishandle the employee review period. But the number one predictor of team morale, whether an employee believes leadership listens to them, to their input. That's a Harvard Business Review statistic right there. So millennials and Gen Z, y'all, they're not whining. They're warning you. And if HR and leadership don't reframe the feedback and the conversation as insight, as wanted, as needed, they're going to keep managing turnover instead of talent. And I know that that is a big problem in today's workplace. The turnover rate is exceptionally challenging. So let's talk about the cost of dismissal, because that's really what I'm wanting to start first with this series. You know, when I decided to dive into a series all around Dear HR, I'm not whining, I'm warning you. It really is about, hey, leaders, I'm warning you. I'm not whining. I'm asking you to pay attention. Because sometimes what we end up doing is we as leaders and HR leadership and leadership in organizations, we get a dismissive attitude and tone because we can label people as needy or entitled or soft. I was just in a conversation the other day and I had to laugh because they were talking about, it's not soft skills that they need hard skills. They need to toughen up. Well, yes. And I actually know senior leaders that could use some help with nurturing the soft skill category, if you will. But here's the translation of that. I see something that you don't, and I'm trying to help. So meaning if I'm labeling you as needy, let's reframe it as into I see something that you don't, and I'm trying to help. Dismissal equals erosion of trust. So when we dismiss somebody and their perspective, when we set aside a team member that's bringing something to the table that's a concern, we're not creating a psychologically safe place. We're not creating an innovative place. We're dismissing people, which erodes trust. And then people shut down and they stop bringing things to us. And oftentimes they'll shift and they'll pivot if their leader's not listening and they're going to go to HR. And unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of times where HR unintentionally gaslights people, with a saying like, we've already addressed that, or we'll take it under advisement. It's not that big of an issue. Oh, you just need to, I've been guilty of saying this. It's time to, suck it up, right? Like step up, pull yourself up by the bootstraps. Let's get going. And in today's world economy, that actually is a form of gaslighting to our employees. So if you're defending the culture instead of evaluating the complaint, you're not protecting the company. You're preserving those blind spots. You're continuing to step over the cracks in the sidewalk. And so what do you want to do about that? Here's the reality. There's a framework that we can use to go from complaint into opportunity, right? Where we're taking the idea that we have a person that's constantly complaining. I want to teach you how to reframe that in a 3-step process, right? It's really a great way. We'll call it the translator method, right? You want to translate the complaint. What are they really saying beneath the frustration? If they're continuously, that Gen Zer is, or that millennial is consistently coming in with a complaint about, I'm not being heard, I'm not being asked the questions, or I don't feel like my feedback is being taken and being considered. What's really underneath the surface? They haven't felt seen, heard, or celebrated. Not like we need to pat them on the back celebrated, but seen, heard, or celebrated for being a contributor to the conversation. So you want to get underneath and ask them, what's really going on underneath that complaint of yours, right? You also want to be paying attention to the pattern. So identify the pattern. Have you heard the same complaint from other people? Or is it just a complaint you heard from one person? Is it just one person that says, I'm not being listened to, my ideas aren't being taken seriously, and I'm frustrated about that. I'm feeling dismissed. I haven't had a quarterly review or an annual review to understand how I'm doing in my job. Is this one person consistently? Or are you hearing it bits, parts, and pieces from other people? If the answer is no, we're not hearing it from other people, it really is just the one person, then I would be exploring the conversation broader beyond the one person that's actually speaking up, because that doesn't mean that the others aren't feeling it. It just might mean they're not going to speak up about it, right? That's where you go into your 3rd step of it, which is to strategize the response, right? You want to understand, okay, I hear you. I hear this is a frustration for you that you don't feel heard. What does feeling heard look like to you? How do you know, or tell me a time when you felt like your ideas were received by this boss of yours? Okay. HR, you have a huge ability, a power. It's a powerful opportunity for you to go into asking more questions. Be curious with your people. Because why? Because when we can get into identifying and shifting or strategizing a response to see what can be shifted, is it a process? Is it clarity? Is there a behavior? Is it the ownership? Is it the way that the individual that's bringing the complaint and their boss, are they actually having 20-minute check-ins? Are they having check-ins at all? Just to do a temperature check, right? That's where you get to go in and strategize with the individual as HR, as the leader, to be able to reframe it. So you go from you translate the complaint, right, to get to what's really going on beneath the surface, right? Identify if there is a pattern, because we can break up the pattern. And oftentimes those patterns, when they're exposed to the individual that is, I'll call them the offender, right? The boss or the leader that's the offender of the not listening or whatever the complaint is. When you can actually identify a pattern of behavior, they're able to hear it different versus always just pointing back to the one person or the two people that are the complainers. Because why? Because we've labeled them that way. We want to get away from labeling them and give some hard data, right? So here are some examples that I want you to tune into, like listen in, lean in with me. If someone comes in and says, I'm overwhelmed, then what that usually means is I need a clearer scope and some ownership. I don't have a clear path here. I need some help with that. If you have someone complaining that says no one listens here, right? That means our communication loop is broken. So what are we going to do about that? This place is toxic is a framework for we don't correct bad behavior fast enough for me, and it's impacting my ability to do great work. So when you hear the I'm overwhelmed, the no one listens, or this place is toxic, flip it around and reframe it and understand, pull the curtain back, if you will, and reframe it into that person just probably needs some clarity. Oh, our communication isn't working here. How do we fix that? And maybe we need to correct a bad behavior or behaviors that aren't working and serving. 3 easy ways to really break this loop, if you will. And I want you to know this. There's language that shifts the dynamic, meaning you have the opportunity to reframe things with questions for clarity so that you're shifting the dynamic. What we lock onto, remember our brain's heat seeking missiles. I'm locking on to a problem and that's all I see. And when I get up in the morning and I go into work and if all I'm focusing and replaying in my head is that same problem, you have the ability to stop that by helping the person to reframe it. If not this, then what, right? Instead of saying things like when they bring a problem to you, oh, well, we've handled that. You want to say, you know what, thanks for bringing that to our attention again. It seems like maybe what we thought was handled and resolved still seems unresolved to you. Let's talk about it. Let's go deeper. I'm reframing it. I'm getting them off of they're just because sometimes those complainers, those people, whatever the generation is, they come in with the complaint. Why? Because they're frustrated about something that they still don't see different. They still aren't on a different path yet. And you might think, we have talked about this again and again, and we've put the fixes in place. Why are they still so stuck on, right? How do they not see that we've changed? Well, listen, our opportunity is to bring out the box of crayons, friends, and draw them a new picture, help them to see the new picture, right? Acknowledge and appreciate that they brought it to your attention and that maybe we're still missing something instead of just going, we've handled it. You need to stop talking about it, right? We try to shut people down and that doesn't help either. So instead of that, we want to go deeper with them. And then there's this one. Instead of saying that, you know what? Oh, wow, we've never heard this complaint before. That's always my favorite. Oh, I've never heard anybody make this complaint. That's the leader who has tunnel vision and is such a lack of awareness of their own presence. And they're not even tuned into what's going on around them. We've never heard that. I've never heard anybody. No one's ever told me that I was not a good communicator. I've heard that one. That one always makes me laugh. Everybody's been told they're not a good communicator from time to time. But it gives, we wanted to use that as an opportunity to look at something, like to examine it, right? And then to just say, tell me about a time when we've come close to that complaint, or your experience matters to me. And I know that you haven't seen it before, but maybe we've seen it in other people, or have we seen it in other meetings, right? Even if it's the first time that we're hearing it, let's dig into it. How do we examine this so that we don't hear it again? Okay, I can acknowledge this is the first time you're hearing this. I'm not going to make you wrong because this is the first time you're hearing it. And I know that we've talked about it before, but leader, I'm going to actually say, okay, well, how about we dig into it so we don't ever hear it again, right? It's really okay to do that because when people speak up, they're not pointing fingers, they're holding up a mirror. And leaders, it's important that we don't look away. Okay. All right. I want to get into my fourth part of this before I close you out on this wonderful little series that we've launched into. I'm going to give you a mini culture reset. Okay. This is an action plan for HR, for leaders, and it is going to be simple. I want you to go through, and I would encourage you to probably get the mirror out, but also sit with a group of people that you know can be that mirror to reflect back and do an audit on dismissive phrases that we use. Make a list of them. Make a commitment to eliminate them and replace them with an engagement forward language. But first, you got to do the audit. What are the dismissive phrases that we use? And you probably could go back through the complaints that you received in the last, let's say, 90 days or 6 months from people and see what phrases, what automatically comes up. What's your automatic autopilot response? Those are usually the dismissive phrases that we use. Step 2 is you want to install a decision trail, which is a feedback loop, right? Show employees how their feedback is received, considered, and acted upon, or why it isn't, which that in simplest terms means when someone brings feedback, you can ask them, you can thank them for the feedback, tell them that you're going to consider it, and how about we circle back in a week? How about we circle back in 10 days? Because I want some time to consider your feedback. Or you can ask, what is it you're wanting as an outcome from this feedback? Okay, that's a really interesting approach. Well, I'm going to want to do some research on it. Give me 5 days. Let's come back to it on Monday. Can you meet with me? And you set up that next 20-minute conversation right then, right there and then. We don't wait to then 3 weeks later, we're going to come back to it. Understood? So you create that feedback loop and you let them know what you're going to do and what they can expect. It's a game changer, friends. And step 3, start every staff meeting with a celebration, right? With one win. Here's a really good. I love it when people go around and celebrate, but I would do one listening win. Here's what that looks like. You can start the meeting and say, well, here's something that we've heard, right? Remember, third-party affirmations go so far. And here's what we're doing about it. Here's some feedback that we've received, and here's what we're doing about it. And I want everybody to hear it all at the same time. When you as the leader do that with your team, everybody heard the feedback and they heard that you went into action on it and you gave everybody the same output, if you will, the same outcome at the same time. That's huge because then there's no water cooler conversations because Joe heard one thing and Sally heard another. And then you got Charlie who heard something completely different. Do it with everybody, but take that moment to celebrate using one listening win as a great opportunity to share what we're doing and why we appreciate it. And then I've got an HR translator toolkit that we're building. So what I want you to do is I want you to drop me a DM. I want you to send me an email. We're going to have it up, a link ready for you so you can actually download the HR translator toolkit. It's really important. And whether you're HR or you're a leader, we all got to take into consideration these, but it's really about how to have a powerful one-on-one coaching session or debrief through using powerful tools like questions to guide the process. That 4-step process right there is going to really up level for you. It's going to up level a culture reset if we have a culture where we find that we have some complaining going on. So if you want your best people to stay, friends, I want you to not just hear them. I want you to understand them. That's my ask of you. And what we've gone over today is how to do that. So we don't want to wait, right? We don't want to wait for the exit interview to get their feedback. We want to be asking for it now and taking the time to take it seriously because your culture is not defined by what you say. It's actually defined by how well you listen. That is a mic drop moment. Your culture is not defined by what you say, friends. It's defined by how well you listen. So I want to thank you for joining me in the sandbox today. And I want to celebrate the millennials and the Gen Zs and the leaders that are leading them because it's not complaining, right? It's a cry for strategy. And what I just gave you in this episode is a strategy to start changing the complaint into action. And that is ultimately what you want. And that's what your people want. So thanks for joining me in the sandbox today. I'll see you next time. Make it a great day and God bless.